Good to be back in Barcelona again. I think I was on this very stage back in 2017, probably talking about P2PE. I also should probably update the photo that you see behind me. It's probably due. If any of you are estimating the amount of years that might have elapsed since then, please be kind in those estimates. I'll appreciate it. And I might have extra drink tickets for anyone that underestimated. So this also is not the first time I've been between all of you and lunch. So I can appreciate that. So we'll make this seem quick, but yet still deliver a lot of great information. So let's get started. So just a brief history. If you're new to P2PE, this might surprise you. It's been around a while. And when I say P2PE, I'm referring to the PCI Council's PCI P2P standard and program. Started all the way back in 2011 with version 1, just when we had requirements. There weren't even associated test procedures until the .1 release. And then in 2015, we put out version 2. I'll talk about that a bit today, and P2P components, very important. In 2019, we put out version 3, and the latest release, version 3.1, in 2021. And we've also, again, put out some recent program updates that I'll talk about today. And if you're like me, you'd look at a slide like this and say, is there anything else you could put on that slide? And the answer would be yes. And I'm going to make folks wait a few minutes for that, but we do have some more stuff coming to talk about today. I'm not going to belabor this. I think we're all experts, and I had the benefit that we already had a P2P session just before this. I do want to make a few points. So a prerequisite to the PCI P2P standard program is the use of this is very long to say, PCI-approved PTS POI device. And what would the council be without an excessive use of acronyms? But I do want to make a few points. So not only is it that type of device, it's with yet another acronym. SRED stands for Secure Reading and Exchange of Data. And that essentially is the set of requirements within the PTS POI standard that protects account data. So you'll often hear SRED associated with encryption. It's SRED encrypted. That's sort of a misnomer. SRED is a set of requirements that were added in version 3 of the PTS POI standard to account for, pun intended, account data. As folks know, hopefully, the genesis of the POI standard was around PIN data. So it's an actual set of requirements that's the data coming in, how it transverses through that through the PCBs into the microcontroller, gets processed, encrypted, sent out. That actually is the entirety of what SRED did. Encryption of that data is one of those requirements. And the other thing, the use of that device and encryption does not equate to the PCI P2P standard. I like this slide. If you've been around for a while at our meetings, you would have seen this back in 2019. And this really is a fundamental model of where we're at with P2P today. So way back, as we saw in that timeline in version 1, P2P was a monolithic standard. You could assess an entire solution, and ever since the beginning, you could outsource to third parties, but there wasn't a construct to list those third parties. So every time those third parties got used in the solution, they had to get reassessed. In version 2, and you see that in the purple there, we introduced the P2P component model. So that allows those third parties, and they're predefined within the program relative to the requirement attribution, but it allows those specific types to get assessed, validated, and listed. And the benefit of that is those validated components that are on the list do not have to get reassessed when they get integrated into a solution. And this has become an absolutely fundamental component of the P2P standard program. And in 2019, when we did version 3, we introduced the new components in blue. Now, those are a little bit nuanced. They're not components with new requirements. Based on stakeholder feedback, we took 2 of the components and we sort of bifurcated the set of requirements into smaller sets. So the best example is the key injection facility, the KIF there. Some folks said, well, we have entities doing key injection, but they're not doing key generation, or vice versa. And so we took those requirements and did an attribution so that folks that maybe weren't doing the full breadth of what a KIF is, how it's defined in the program, could do a smaller set, but still benefit from getting listed. And this sets up, going into the next slide, these are some current numbers of showing how important the component model has proven to be. There's a lot of component listings. Now, it's not required to use components to assemble a solution, but is exceptionally helpful because, again, they don't have to get reassessed. They're already listed. As you can see here, we have a lot of types, 8 currently, and you can mix and match, right? You can grab a KIF here. You can grab an encryption management component there. You could even employ multiple listed KIFs. Some people say, well, I need a KIF over this geographic region. I need one for over here. A lot of flexibility with the component model for P2PE. And now we're going to get to the crux of it. Alicia talked about it. What we're going to talk about today is all based on feedback from events like this, from RFCs, from other stakeholder engagement opportunities. And we took all that feedback and we looked at it and said, there's a lot of things we could do to the P2P program now that we don't have to wait to do a full standard revision. And we wanted to do that, and that is what we did. And we're going to talk about a few of them. All of the documents you see on the screen were recently published just back in September. Alicia was kind enough to create this QR code for us and do a blog post. And so you can click that QR code, go read the blog post if you want, and it points out to our document library that has these documents. So the program guide really is kind of the nucleus, as one might imagine, of the program. I know program updates don't always seem as exciting perhaps as a standard update, but this is really where I say it's putting principle to practice. The document here, the acronym, the PAOV, is the P2P Attestation and Validation. That's a document that's used 4 different ways across hundreds of vendors. It's an oft-used document. So something is somewhat seemingly trivial is an attestation document, quite short in its page count. It's used for all sorts of purposes. New assessments, delta changes, administrative changes, for annual revalidation. So even where we had an opportunity based on feedback to streamline these documents, make them easier to complete, help reduce the issues that we were encountering when they were submitted, to make the process, I know I'm not a fan of buzzwords, but truly to make it more streamlined, make it easier, reduce the rejection rate just on errors that we can potentially ameliorate with some changes. So all of these are out now, and this benefits everyone. It benefits those already participating in the program now, and benefits those that are going to be coming into the program. So some will have a sigh of relief here. I'm not going to cover all of this. This is shorthand version for a lot of the changes we made. Most of this will resonate to folks that currently participate in the program, but we did a lot of stuff. I know from experience, I'll just put it that way, it would take me a few hours to cover off all of these items. We are not going to do that because we have lunch. I'm going to cover just a few things. Some of the most prominent feedback we got program-wise, and it relates to the standard as well, was around POI device testing. What we did, even before we published the program updates, we used our technical FAQ process to put out a revision to the sampling criteria around the testing of POI devices. If this pertains to you and you did not know this, it's both in the updated program guide now, as well as in our P2P technical FAQs. It is significantly reduced in the expectation for sampling on POI devices, and it's got the criteria in there. I would do a disservice trying to basically restate it. So we took at that. But we're also going to look at device testing when we do the standard revision as well, and the requirements and test procedures that we have. Another prominent item of feedback was around symmetric and asymmetric keys. So as I mentioned earlier, components are defined with a preset attribution of the requirements in the standard. And because of that, they have to meet those requirements to sort of qualify for that component type, if you will, is the easiest way to explain it. And it wasn't allowed to use not applicable to descope a component. And there's a lot of reasons why we don't have the time for that. But this was a pain point. Folks saying, look, we just have entities for whatever reason are not covering one of these key types. Based on the revision, they now can use not applicable. It gets documented through the process, through the ROV template, goes in the portal, and there's an attribute that follows the product that essentially denotes if they've done one, the other, or both. So we've accommodated that, and we've met that piece of feedback. And that applies to components. And the next two are sort of similar, deltas and reassessments. These are items, the applications and the components are primarily consumed by solutions. And so when those products were going through certain changes, for applications here it's a delta, for components a reassessment under certain criteria, the way that it's linked to the solution listing is by a reference number. It's a unique identifier for the listing. And what we've done is kept that reference number static. I know this is a bit boring, it's a bit minutia, but what it means is the solution from, as it's represented on its listing, can continue to just do what it does best, protect cardholder data, and not have to worry about a little bit extra process and paperwork because those reference numbers of things it might be consuming aren't changing. So it's a bit of minutia there, but it's really helpful to avoid doing what it had to do as a delta process to update its listing. And then I talked about the AOV, and really, it almost is a new AOV. We had 3 separate AOVs for solutions, components, and applications. We took those, consolidated into one, and then made improvements. So now it's just a single document. You don't have to worry, did I grab the right AOV? Did I submit the right one? Did I fill it out correctly for this thing? It's just one document, one AOV. So this does pertain to you participating in the program. Go out there, grab it, use the new one. It will definitely benefit you. So we saw on the timeline, there's a little bit of something to come besides just these program updates, and that would be P2P v4. So the numeric schema there probably gives it away. That would be a major revision effort, and that's already underway. So we didn't do the program updates in lieu of doing a standard revision. We just knew we could do that now while we're also working on a standard revision. Now the standard will entail its own program updates as it needs to for how those changes manifest, but we are working on that now and can provide just a little bit. This is not an exhaustive list, just an item of a few things. I'm going to talk on the next slide a bit more about number 1, but that one is number 1 for a reason. The rest of them are arbitrary in their numbering. So I'll do 2 through 6 here. We're going to look at the component types again. I've emphasized how critical it is for assembling a solution and how beneficial. We're just going to make sure, are the requirements we're attributing to those component types, again, which is predefined, is that still fit for purpose? Has the industry moved? Do we need to do a new attribution? Do we need to remove, change, requirements as it is? We want to make sure that's purpose fit for industry. So we'll take a look at that. And I'll skip to 4 there because related, folks have also said, hey, can you do just a remote key distribution component? So right now we have ancillary requirements that are sort of tacked on to other things for remote key distribution, but folks have said, hey, can you just make that its own component type so that if we're just doing that service, we can benefit from that listing and not having to get reassessed every time we integrate. Number 3 there, we try not to overlook, but sometimes we focus heavily on the standard and the program. But sometimes we need to look outside that. How can we increase participation? How can we increase awareness? So this was a prominent point brought up by stakeholder. Actually, this was the CM last year in Portland where this was brought up. And 5, I alluded to this earlier. We've done some things for POI devices. We want to look at it more. Are all the requirements we have fit for purpose? Are they necessary? Again, some of these have existed since the genesis of P2P from 2011. Let's take another look at it. Let's look at the test procedures. Are they fit for purpose? Are those test procedures fit for the component types that they're attributed to? We're going to take a look at that. And then the last one, we've also had some feedback about, can we take another look on signing requirements? So those that are familiar with the standard, they're kind of sprinkled in there, here and there. People said, can we make that either a prominent focus or at least aggregate them together so it's a little bit more clear how signing requirements pertain to our assessment and our service offering. This is the last slide. This is what stands between all of you and lunch. Very important though, if I had to say there's a theme for P2P v4, it is this. It is key management alignment. This extends beyond just P2P. As folks know, we have multiple standards. If folks are very familiar with P2P, you know Domain 5 is comprised essentially of the PCI PIN standard. So we have key management requirements sprinkled throughout different standards in various forms and length and robustness. So this is more of a concerted effort that extends beyond P2P. But since we're talking about P2P, this might look like a single set of requirements, maybe a singular reference source where we're consolidating these key management requirements. And again, that includes the associated device management, some potential environmental management that goes along with key management. And for P2P, this could be a potential or eventual replacement for P2P Domain 5, could be an alternative to Domain 5. We don't know yet. So as you see from the last 2 bullets there, 1, very early stages. So there'll be more to come on this as we meet and we send out communications and all our various engagement opportunities that we have. But also, pun intended here, stakeholder feedback is key. So Alicia mentioned this. You'll hear it throughout the conference this week. If you're already in a position to participate, look for those opportunities that come up where it relates to this key management alignment effort at the council. If you are not in a position yet, or don't know how to participate, reach out. There are folks here that can help you. They're here on site this week. So whether that's being able to participate in an RFC, whether it's getting involved in one of the stakeholder groups, even if it's having a discussion at meetings like this, please do find a way to participate. This will be absolutely germane to the development in this initiative. And with that, we covered a lot in a quick amount of time, so I will send everyone off to lunch, but I will say I will be, today, tomorrow, I'll be out on the vendor showcase at the PCI booth. So you have any questions about P2P whatsoever, track me down, find me. Again, my name is Mike Thompson. Happy to answer questions as I can. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.